Almost 2 years ago, when Jonathan, the producer of this podcast, and I were beginning Tree Speech, we saw how the pandemic was allowing more people, including us, to be outside and experiencing nature as part of an everyday routine. All we knew was that we loved trees and that we were interested in exploring our relationships to them. Since that time, we have been constantly surprised and delighted to further understand the extreme reach and interconnected intricacy that trees have within every aspect of our experiences and the events that affect our society and world. We have not found one area of our modern life that is not touched in some ways by trees, and our very survival is reliant on them. Trees also serve as a constant example of how an ecosystem will thrive best when it supports the needs of all its diverse members. In this episode, I speak with Meghan Buell, the founder of Trees, the transgender resource education and enrichment services organization that she created and leads to provide transgender education to small towns and rural America. Located in South Bend, Indiana, Trees has expanded to develop their Tree House, an inclusive physical space containing a resource library, research areas, a meeting room, and a place for understanding and empathy to take root. My name is Dory Robinson, and this is Tree Speech, a podcast where we strive to listen to the forest through the trees. This week's episode was written and recorded in Massachusetts, on the native lands of the Wabanaki Confederacy, Pennacook, Massachusetts, and Pawtucket people, and in New York on the land of the Lenape tribes, as well as in Indiana on the land of the Peoria tribe. Tree Speech is co-written and produced by Jonathan Zautner with the Light Theater Guild. In this country and around the world, the rights of transgender people have been continuously politicized as politicians use gender identity as a hot-button issue to prey on misconceptions and a lack of understanding to scare their voters. This fear-mongering leads to discriminatory practices in every area of society and life, from federal policies to school regulations, military bans to medical discrimination, and bathroom bills to sports fields. Even worse, anti-trans rhetoric creates a divide as groups of people are labeled and seen as other, leading directly to violence toward the transgender community as a result of a perpetuation of false narratives and harmful stereotypes. Under Meghan's leadership, Trees has identified a need for education in the underserved communities which lie in the rural fabric of this country, and their mission is to focus their educational efforts in cities, towns, and communities of 25,000 people or less, with the goal of using education to change the culture in these areas and create a more inclusive environment for transgender identifying individuals to live an enriched, safe, and successful life free of violence and discrimination. I'd like to offer definitions and clarity regarding several of the terms Meghan and I used during our conversation. First, the word transgender is a term used to describe people whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. Gender identity is an individual's personal, internal knowledge of their own gender. For transgender people, the biological sex they were assigned at birth and their gender identity do not match. Transgender is an umbrella term regarding gender identity, and so individuals in the transgender community may use other terms to be more specific. We'll have links in our show notes to learn more about these definitions and tips on how to be a supportive ally, including by using proper terms and pronouns. Meghan Buell is a lifelong resident of Indiana. She has been a leader in the transgender community locally, regionally, and nationally, and has served on nonprofit boards, transgender advisory committees, and is a regular collegiate guest lecturer. Meghan began Trees Inc. as a way to pay it forward to the transgender community after living and transitioning in a small town environment and successfully traversing the challenges. It was an honor to speak with her about her life and her nonprofit and how the metaphor of trees guides it all. Let's listen. Hi, Meghan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Great. So let's just jump right in. On your website, the story of Trees Inc. begins in early 2012. You went from thinking, what if, to writing how to in an old beat up notebook. The idea for trees began to sprout. Today, you have a sapling, tomorrow, a forest. What led you to this change in thinking?
Again, thank you for having me. Just to introduce myself, my name is Meghan Buell, and my pronouns are she and her. And I founded the organization as part of a giving back to society as a way to increase visibility and help communities be better prepared for when a trans person comes into their environment. So really the work is community development based on behalf of the transgender community. As I was growing up and being confused about myself, there was a lack of resources in my community, visible people, someone to connect with. And it stymied my growth really for a long time. And I just thought it was important to help others by creating safer, more inclusive spaces. And so the organization kind of sprouted from seeing so many people have to leave small town and rural communities to go to other places to find connection, resources, and people like themselves. And why can't we just turn that 180 and make wherever they are the best place for them?
Yeah, why can't we? Like you said, going from what if to how to, which is a really interesting way of thinking of going from this might never happen to I can make this happen and I will make a plan and I will make the list.
It mirrors my own journey in a lot of ways, because I never thought that I would be at this point where I could be out and proud as a transgender woman. And so it was always a what if, but never really going to happen. And so starting Trees was that, what if I started an organization? What would it do and what would it look like? And would it even last? And we're coming up on our 8-year anniversary in January. So what ifs to how to's, yes.
Can we hear more about your journey?
So I grew up in a small conservative Midwest city where there were, and this was at a time when there was no internet, there was no cable television. So you were limited in the exposure of anything that was gender diverse. So the things that I was thinking about and feeling about myself didn't match anybody else in my community, in my schools, even in the college time. So I just stored them all away as unconnective experiences, and watched how other boys were growing up and tried to mimic what they were doing and how they were acting, and played the part for a long time. And then in the late 90s, I got connected on the internet to a word called transgender. And I read what it was about. And I started to read some biographies of some folks that identified as transgender. And those things that I had been hiding, those experiences, started to make more sense. And think of it as a puzzle. And those pieces of the puzzle started to fit together, and the picture got clearer and clearer as I learned more about what it was to be trans. And I knew I was on the right path to finding out more about myself than I had ever known before, where I thought it was a problem, but in fact, it was just a missing definition. And it gave me direction in my life. And I kept pushing forward and learning more and starting to understand. And here I am. running a
here you
trans
are.
organization based on that discovery of that one word that filled in all the blanks for 35 years of my life, really.
That's an extraordinary thing that suddenly having the word for something gave you the power to be yourself.
So there are a lot of people out there that may not have run into that word yet, or that definition, that may be struggling. And a lot of those people are in areas of the country that have limited access to the internet or resources or books or even a person that looks different to them. And, the work of Trees is really mobile education. And I go there and I just try to have conversations with folks and say, yeah, this is okay. It took me a while to find it and figure it out. And, you can be who you are wherever you're at. And we just have to create the safer culture in those communities.
Tell me a little bit more about what that's been like.
The first year was scary because you create a nonprofit organization, out of scribbles on a notebook, as you read. You never know if anyone is going to find this as important as you are, and you would need the support. I would take our mission and our information to Pride events and some other events, and the reaction from people when they read it was focused in small town and rural communities was like, oh my goodness, we so need this and nobody is doing this. And I did do a national search, and there's no organizations who are set up as a mobile unit working in small town and rural communities. So I knew we had something very unique, but it was still tough to get those conversations started because I couldn't just go riding into small town with my bullhorn and say, hey, let's talk about transgender stuff. They would be like, here's the exit to the town, the other side of that stop sign, keep going. So we really focused on those people that had that reaction at those events to say, hey, let's work together. Rent me a room at your public library. I'll come in and do the talk. We'll have a conversation, connect people in your network to resources. Inherently, we're finding people want to do the right things, but they're afraid to do the wrong things, so they don't do anything. So if we can get them a resource that helps them, maybe be the first domino in their community and start conversations. It's a lot of communications work and respectful communications at that. Maybe that town has a chance to change on its own organically. And we don't have to be there to nurture that or cultivate that. We are planting the seeds of diversity and hoping that those communities then cultivate that inclusive culture. And, it just takes somebody to go and I use my own personal stories. I put myself out there to, in a way, humanize it for them because they're probably only getting stuff off the internet or over dramatized things on television. And I just want to tell, I'm simple people trying to live a life. It may not be the same life that you're living. Doesn't make it better or worse. It just makes it different. And they should all have a chance. But unfortunately, what's happening is either somebody is living there afraid and they start to think that suicide is their best option, or they're being forced to leave, or worse, they're being killed. And that has to stop. That has to stop. So a lot of our mission really is embedded in saving lives one way or another and using education and resource building as those tools. But it's not, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right?
No, it's not easy. And you do mention saving lives in your mission and in your vision. Can you tell us more about the services that you offer in order to do that?
Well, it's really education. I will go and talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, because that one conversation and sharing my own personal stories could make a connection that makes somebody go, oh, well, okay, that's not so bad, because it's more than likely contrary to what they're being told elsewhere. We're not working directly with the trans community, but we can connect the trans community to service providers, friendly places, competent healthcare, and other agencies. So we're like the clearinghouse and the distributor of good resources. But what we do in our trainings really is to help organizations and community members learn how to think before they speak, communicate in an effective and respectful way, and understand that everybody is coming from different places, and we have to take that into consideration when we work together, play together, network together, and live together. It's nothing more than that. So our service is education to make a safer, better world so people can grow and go from sprouts to full-fledged oak trees and powerful. When a gender diverse person doesn't feel part of the community loses because there's one less person in their midst that isn't contributing. Communities are best when everybody feels they can contribute and be part of that community. And so it's a win-win all the way across the board.
It really is. It's just such a powerful thing. And it's reflected in all parts of our world that we are better when we are inclusive. How did the tree metaphor begin?
I really started to just think about what it is that we're doing. And we're planting something. We're planting an idea. We're planting a thought process. We're starting really from scratch. We have no idea what this thing is going to look like, how tall it might grow. So it really had a lot of the same kind of potential growth layers as a tree would. And trees became us. But the metaphor really is about growing something that makes the planet a better place. When you walk inside, you feel that vibe of inclusivity and welcomeness, and that everybody is allowed in. And it's not a space just for gender diverse people, trans people. It's for the whole community, because our real hope is that maybe a non-binary person is sitting next to a cisgender person and maybe sitting next to a trans person, and they're just working on their computers, doing their own stuff. But that's what chips away at that stigma. When they can just meet another human being and realize that they have more things in common than different. That's what we want this space to help nurture in the community. And so the test run here in South Bend, which is my hometown, is the hope that we can have a treehouse in every community, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just a lot of different ways to connect to the community that don't always have to be queer related. They're just regular stuff that goes on in the community, and then people come in and they realize that, it just feels like a cool, safe.
So you've created this wonderful safe space. While we're on the metaphor of trees and growth, where are some of the places you've been and brought your mobile education?
So we decided that it would be Indiana and states that border Indiana, and we started to make connections and do some work. Then somebody would find out about us somewhere else, and if I could make it work, I would go. So I've gone as far away as the eastern part of Kansas, western Missouri, several places in Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, Pennsylvania. I do some regular work in the western mountainous areas of Virginia, and even flew out to Oakland, California. But
Wow.
What we're finding is that people want information. They really want information.
Mm-hmm.
So our invitations come from all different places. And a lot of it really has started to come from college campuses. And for us, that's like the biggest bang for our time dollar, because in a classroom or on a college campus, you may be talking to 30, 40, 50, or 60 small towns and rural areas for one conversation. And those people could be the ones that go back. The story that connects with that is me being out and proud and standing in front of a group and talking about my own experience and the organization. Maybe there's somebody in the audience who is wondering if they could come out and be proud of who they are. And I got a message about 9 months after I had gone to a small college in central Illinois from a student who was in the audience. And they told me how from the moment they heard me talk about my challenges, but also how far I had come from those challenges, that they had come out to classmates and their parents and their professors, and they felt so confident that they could also do that. And it was because they were in the audience where I spoke. I did not go and tell everybody to go and come out and transition, but you never know who's listening. So the story, the message is powerful in itself. And from my perspective, it's just my life. I've been fortunate to be responded to after a talk by parents of trans kids who have told me that prior to meeting me, they were worried about their child's future because all they had ever seen were the stories of murder and the stats around suicide and how tough it is. And then they meet me and they find out that I run an organization. I'm a elementary school substitute teacher. I have regular jobs, and they're like, you gave me more hope for my child than I ever had before.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I will do this forever because it has impact like that.
What an extraordinary thing to simply stand there, and your existence gives people hope that you get to be the model that you didn't get as a child.
I'll say I don't find my life particularly interesting. Everyone else seems to find my life interesting enough that they kind of nudged me even to write a book. So I'm writing it for them.
Well, then tell us more about the book.
I'm working with a writing team who think this is very important. And so we've kind of modeled it as from the start, the opening of the treehouse and backing up into why this is important, the organization, how they got started, my youth, some of my stories of growing up, some of the stories of being a teacher, places I've gone. It's just stories of how I became me.
So you have a book, you have Treehouse. What are your plans for trees in the future?
I really think like a good maple. We're splitting into good two trunks on this, right? The treehouse itself is operating kind of as a community resource center. Let's get this refined so we can offer this to other communities to try to duplicate the template for it. So I'd love to see tree houses pop up in other communities, whether they're urban areas or rural areas or wherever somebody could support them, just to be a safe space in communities. So I'd like to see that. But the mobile education part of it is really where my passion is and what started all this, the need to get that out to those areas. So I will continue to do that above and beyond even my time with the organization, because as a good nonprofit, we don't stay with these things forever. But I'd like to hand it off to someone to run and duplicate the community center part of it. And my retirement plan is to travel throughout the country and go to college campuses and do the work and point everybody in the direction of trees and the tree houses and just keep the momentum going of changing communities and cultivating safe spaces within them. Yeah. There's lots of seeds to be planted.
I can imagine that in your time going to different places, speaking with different people, that you've really encountered quite a few gatekeepers along the way. And of course, there's higher up gatekeepers in legislation and in politics and all this. Is there a message you would want to share with gatekeepers near and far, or is there something you would want gatekeepers to know?
Sure. Trans people are just people, and their way through life is different than the person standing next to them. But we all are different than the people we stand next to. And again, not one way is better than the other. And we have to get past thinking that we're right and somebody else is wrong. Legislation is not going to stop trans people from existing. All it's going to do is make it harder for them to exist. And we're going to continue to lose lives when we do that. Let people be who they are. And the goal should be everyone should be able to have a happy, fulfilling, enriched life in this country. And too many people are trying to stop that because they somehow think that it's going to change their ability to have a happy, fulfilling, enriched life when it really doesn't. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to control it just because you don't understand it. Learn about it, have a conversation with me, and you'll find out that it's nothing more than one sliver of my whole identity. And I think we can all coexist very peacefully. In the forest, it's not all one type of tree, and they all don't look the same. There's lots of different trees. The canopy you see from the sky is not made up of one type of tree. So let all the trees grow and prosper and multiply and make this place a better place.
Where do you find hope?
I find hope when somebody walks into the treehouse and says, this place is needed in every community. This place is needed in our community. I want to support you. Or I hear from a parent who says, I heard you speak and it changed the way that I have chosen to support my child. Because those are all the things that give me hope that trans people are going to continue to live and prosper and, be happy in this country. So the feedback when somebody says that hearing about trees or meeting me changed how they view the trans community, then I will have that conversation with anybody, anywhere, because it just might be one person whose life and direction and view of the world changes.
Meghan, what a pleasure it is to speak with you. You are such a bright light and you're doing so much for so many. And you're doing it with such this warm, wonderful sense of humor. It's really such a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for making the time.
The humor part, I didn't always laugh at it, but I found that when I can make a joke about it, then the pressure in the room, because this is a topic that people don't want to talk about, but if they can hear me make a joke, then they laugh a little and everybody takes a deep breath and we come out. I'm not coming to teach you something that you don't want to learn. I'm just here to share stories and help you out if you're stuck on a word or stuck on a concept, and maybe giving you an example of how this looks in the real world and compare it to something that you're more familiar with.
You just open the conversation, and that small shift makes an enormous difference.
Yes.
Meghan, thank you for being brave to create this community and brave to share your story. Thank you so much, Meghan, for speaking with us today.
Thank you again for finding us and for inviting me in. I enjoyed this conversation as well, and I look forward to listening and sharing it and letting people know who you all are as well.
To find out more about Meghan and the work that is being done at Trees, please visit webetrees.org. There is also a place on the website to donate, as 100% of this organization is funded by donations, as well as contact information for Meghan if you are interested in her coming to your community. We will have a link to the Trees website in our show notes. While growing increasingly visible in popular culture and daily life, the trans community still faces severe discrimination, stigma, and inequalities. To name a few, despite a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that makes it clear that trans people are legally protected from discrimination in the workplace, there is still no comprehensive federal non-discrimination law that includes gender identity, which means trans people may still lack recourse if they face discrimination when seeking housing or dining in a restaurant. Additionally, there is a lack of healthcare coverage, often because doctors or providers refuse to care for transgender individuals based on their gender identity. The widespread lack of accurate identity documents among trans people can have an impact on every aspect of their lives, including access to emergency housing or other public services. Without identification, one cannot travel, register for school, or access many essential services. And finally, trans people live in poverty at an elevated rate, a rate which climbs dramatically for trans people of color. a report by the National Black Justice Coalition and the National Center for Transgender Equality found that anti-transgender bias, coupled with structural racism, meant that transgender people of color experience devastating levels of discrimination, including high unemployment rates, as well as 41% having experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. This is why Meghan's words are so dearly needed right now, as transphobia rages nationally in the United States, causing strife and violence in its wake. Recently, anti-LGBTQ opponents have introduced and passed laws to ban transgender youth from participating in school sports, from kindergarten all the way through college levels. These laws would bar, for instance, transgender girls from participating in sports with cisgendered girls, or girls whose sex is biologically female. Idaho became the first state to try to enact such a ban last year, but was blocked by a federal judge, and 27 other states have proposed similar legislation. To give some perspective, let's focus on Ohio for a moment, where the Cleveland Scene reported that since 2015, of the 400,000 student athletes in the state, only 3 transgender students competed at the high school level. Nonetheless, for political purposes, Ohio considered a cruel ban on transgender students in sports. Thankfully, this element has been removed. Rather than protecting fairness in sports as they claim to, the laws instead have targeted only a few students in each state, preventing them from participating in athletics with dignity like their peers. Meghan pointed out that there are a variety of trees in the forest, and though they are not all the same, they each help create the beautiful, unique canopy. There is indeed such a wide diversity in nature, which can be easily seen, but has also been scientifically proven. The Nashville Tree Conservation Corporation has stated that, among tree species, there are 3 sexes: male, female, and trees that have perfect flowers, which contain both male and female components. Some tree species even change sex. In addition to trees, there have been copious studies regarding plants, fish, insects, amphibians, birds, and animals changing sex. Gender diversity exists across species of every kind as well. There is much we can learn from trees and nature in regards to the many ways that diversity is able to thrive. It is the variety of its members that makes an ecosystem strong and resilient, and our society functions in the same way. We are inspired by the work that Meghan does to create a safe and enriching life for the transgender community in places where it is so needed, and that work is all of ours to share. There are many actions that can be made to advocate for the human rights, dignity, and safety of all within our families, businesses, schools, communities, states, and world, and we will include resources in our show notes. Our laws and cultural norms should reflect the fundamental dignity of each human being. This means continuing to fiercely support the transgender community as we work towards a world where it is no longer necessary to do so. Thank you for joining Tree Speech today. We are so grateful to Meghan Buell for sharing her story in the Story of Trees, Inc. To learn more about Meghan and trees, please visit weebetrees.org. To learn more about our podcast and episodes, please visit treespeechpodcast.com. We're thrilled to be able to offer interviews, creative insights, and stories about the natural world we live in and the trees who guide our way. Please also consider supporting us through our Patreon. Every contribution supports our production, and we'll be giving gifts of gratitude, including an invitation to our treehouse, our new virtual community for patrons of all levels. Please also consider passing the word to tree-loving folks and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every kind word helps.